The city of Varel was quiet under two pale suns that hung in a dusty sky. The wind carried the smell of metal and smoke. Buildings that once touched the clouds now stood broken, their windows empty like tired eyes. Everyone who was still alive in the city feared the coming of night. When the light faded, something moved through the ruins, hunting without sound. Some called her the vampire woman. Some said she was a ghost. But people whispered her name in fear and prayed the sound of her steps would never reach their doors. No one who met her ever came back. Ethan Brooks did not believe in ghosts. He was a simple man who worked with his hands. Before the city fell apart, he fixed air filters, water pipes, and machines that no one else cared to understand. When the soldiers needed someone to repair turrets along the wall, they came to him. He said yes, because he could not say no. Work meant food, and food meant life. That evening, the sky turned the color of rust. The wind grew colder. Ethan worked beside a young guard named Maria. She was nervous, tapping her fingers on her rifle. They say she only hunts when the first sun sets, Maria said softly. Ethan did not look up. Stories. People talk too much when they are scared. Maria did not stop watching the horizon. Last night she took 3 men from the south gate. They found blood, nothing else. I think it was real. Ethan tightened a bolt and forced a small smile. Maybe, but that is not our problem until it stands in front of us. When darkness fell, the others on the wall lit fires to keep the shadows away. No one laughed. The city was a graveyard of broken lamps and crumbling towers. Ethan kept checking the power cores on the guns when a soft sound made him freeze. It was not the wind. It was lighter, slower, like footsteps moving over sand. Maria lifted her rifle. Ethan, did you hear that? Like that. He nodded once. They looked over the wall. The red dust below was still at first. Then something moved. A shape in a long dark cloak stepped out from the fog. It did not rush. It walked, graceful and sure. Even from a distance, Ethan could tell it was a woman. Stay behind me, Maria whispered. The woman stopped about 20 feet away and raised her head. Her face was pale, almost glowing in the dim light. Her eyes were silver, calm, and cold as water from the deep ground. She's real, Maria breathed. Oh God. Ethan reached for his tool belt. He wanted to think, to understand, but his mind went blank. The woman's eyes shifted to him, holding his gaze. For a moment he thought she might speak, but she only tilted her head like she saw something in him that no one else could. A man farther down the wall fired his gun. The flash lit the street. The bullet missed, hitting a metal pipe. In the next heartbeat, the woman moved. She was fast, a blur of shadow and wind. The soldiers shouted. Maria fired again and again, but the bullets tore through air. One man screamed and vanished from sight. Ethan stumbled backward. The woman appeared in front of him, silent as a falling leaf. She was close enough that he could see her lips, red as blood but trembling. She did not attack. She looked at him, tired, almost sad. Ethan raised his hand as if to protect himself. She touched his wrist lightly. Her skin was cold, but the touch was not cruel. She leaned closer. For a strange moment, Ethan thought she might be crying, but her face showed no tears. Then darkness pulled him down and he fell. When he woke, everything was quiet. The fire on the wall had gone out. He was lying on the ground inside an old stone building. His chest hurt, but he was alive. Beside him was a folded piece of cloth binding the cut on his arm. There was a faint smell of sweet herbs. Someone had cared for his wound. He tried to stand and saw footprints leading out through the broken doorway. He heard no sound, no voice. Only the wind moving softly through the empty streets. Ethan touched his arm, feeling the bandage, and whispered to himself, "Why would she help me?" He looked at the doorway again. The night outside was still thick, but the first hint of morning light touched the ruins. For the first time since the world had fallen into fear, he wondered if the vampire woman was not the monster people said she was. Perhaps there was something hidden behind her hunger. He pushed the door open and stepped into the dim dawn, his heart beating fast, his mind filled with questions he was not ready to ask. The city was silent, but somewhere in the distance, he thought he heard footsteps, steady and fading into the wind. Ethan sat on the cold floor for a long time, staring at the quiet street outside. His thoughts were heavy, moving in slow circles. He did not know if what had happened was real or only a dream. The stories said no one lived after meeting the vampire woman, yet here he was, alive, breathing, his wound wrapped in clean cloth. He carefully stood up, holding the wall for balance. His legs trembled from weakness, but his mind was wide awake. He looked around the old building. The ceiling was high and cracked. Once it might have been a place of music or worship. Now it was only dust and broken benches. In one corner rested an old lantern, still faintly burning. Someone must have stayed here while he slept. Ethan walked toward the doorway, hoping to find whoever had helped him. Outside, the air was cool. The red light of morning fell through the ruins, painting the stones gold and orange. He saw fresh footprints on the ground leading down a narrow alley. He followed them slowly, not out of courage, but out of need for answers. The path led him to an open courtyard where ivy grew through the cracks of old tiles. In the middle, near a dried fountain, stood the woman. Her dark cloak moved gently in the wind. She was taller than he had thought, her hair long and silver in the sunlight. She watched the sky as if waiting for it to speak to her. Ethan stopped several feet away. His heart beat faster. She turned her head, and their eyes met again. "I thought you were going to kill me," he said at last, his voice shaking a little. She looked calm. "If I wanted you dead, you would not be standing." Her tone was neither cruel nor kind, only honest. "Why did you save me?" he asked. She stepped closer, slow and graceful. "Because you hesitated to kill me. No one else does that." Ethan remembered that moment on the wall, how he had frozen instead of shooting. He did not think his stillness would mean anything, yet somehow it had. "What are you?" he asked. "People say you hunt for blood." Her eyes softened. "I do, not because I want to, but because my body needs it. Long ago, my people tried to stop it. We looked for a cure. Then the sickness spread, and humans feared us. He hunted us until only I was left." Ethan was quiet, trying to take in her words. "So you are the last. I am the last," she said. "Once I ruled a land of peace, now I walk among bones." Her voice carried a sadness that made the air around her feel heavy. Ethan could not look away. Something about her was both beautiful and tragic. She looked at him carefully. "Do your people still guard the tower near the ridge?" "Yes," he said. "The soldiers keep what is left of the old city's power cells there." She nodded. "There are old writings stored deep below the tower. They speak of ways to heal what we became. I cannot reach them alone. If I try, they will attack." "You want my help?" Ethan said slowly. "I want understanding," she replied. "If the cure exists, I can end the hunger. I will not take another life." You saw that? He knew she was right. She could have killed him easily, but had chosen not to. Still, the idea of helping her went against everything he had known. Ethan rubbed his hand over his face. "If they see me with you, they'll think I betrayed them. Then don't let them see you," she said simply. He almost laughed, but there was nothing amusing about it. "You talk like you already believe. I've decided." "I see doubt in your eyes," she said, "but also hope. You are tired of fighting something you don't understand." She turned to leave but stopped, as if giving him time to think. "If you want answers, come back here when the sun sets. I will wait." Ethan watched her walk away until she disappeared between the ruins, her cloak melting into the shadows. For the rest of the day, he wandered the empty streets, seeing ghosts of the past in every corner. He remembered the faces of those he had lost, and thought about what kind of world they had tried to build. What if she spoke the truth? What if she could be cured, and the fighting could stop? The idea sounded impossible, yet he wanted to believe it. When night returned, he found himself walking back to the courtyard. The lantern by the fountain burned again, soft and steady. She stood beside it, waiting as she had promised. "I came," he said. "I knew you would," she replied. He sighed. "If we do this, how do we start?" She looked toward the ridge, where the tower lights blinked faintly in the far distance. "We travel when the suns rise. You know the patrol paths. Guide me to the gate, and I will guide you below." Ethan nodded slowly. Then it settled. She gave a faint smile that reached her eyes, not full of joy, but of something close to peace. That night, under the broken sky, the man and the vampire woman prepared to walk a path no one else had dared, a path between fear and trust. For the first time, Ethan felt that the world might not be beyond saving after all. The morning light broke over the city ruins with a thin glow. The air was cool and dry, and the sand lifted in small waves when the wind passed. Ethan and the woman stood near the edge of the old road that led toward the tower on the ridge. She had wrapped herself tightly in her dark cloak to hide her eyes from the sun. Her skin looked almost translucent in daylight, but her steps were steady. Ethan checked the small pack on his shoulder. He carried 2 water bottles, some dried food, and a small energy cell in case they needed light later. He did not bring any weapons, except a simple knife. He told himself that if she had wanted to harm him, she would have done so already. "Are you sure you can manage the day's light?" he asked quietly. She smiled a little, though it seemed forced. "It burns, but it will not kill me. I've walked through worse." They started across the open ground, keeping close to the old wall ruins for cover. Birds had long vanished from Varel, so their footsteps were the only sound. Far behind them, pieces of smoke rose from the human camp inside the north walls. He thought of the soldiers of Captain Lena Pierce, and wondered what she would do if she saw him walking beside the woman everyone feared. After some time, they reached a long stretch of broken road where weeds grew through the cracks. "We have to cross this plain," Ethan said. "It's no place to hide out there." "Then we move fast," she answered. Her movements were light, almost noiseless, like a shadow moving along the ground. They walked in silence for an hour. The ridge ahead of them rose out of the floor of the desert, sharp and steep. From here, they could already see the tall shape of the old tower. It was built of white stone that still glimmered faintly, even after centuries. To Ethan, it looked like a finger pointing at the sky, accusing, lonely, and proud. When they were halfway there, Ethan suddenly crouched. "Stay down," he hissed. 2 patrol vehicles moved along the road below, throwing dust into the air. Ethan recognized the marking on the side panels. They belonged to Lena Pierce's unit. The woman looked at him. "We cannot turn back now," he thought fast. "There's a drainage tunnel under the ridge. It was used before the war. It can take us under the patrol route." She nodded once. "Lead the way." They crawled through the dry channel. Its roof cracked and low. The dust made them cough, and the sound of metal boots echoed faintly from above. Ethan felt his heart beating hard, afraid the noise would give them away. The woman moved behind him like a ghost, silent calm. When they finally emerged from the other side, the towers loomed close enough to touch. Ethan stood and brushed the dirt from his clothes. "We're here." She looked up at the tall entrance, half buried in sand. The doors were locked with heavy bars that glowed faintly with defensive power. "They sealed it with an old code," Ethan said. "I can open it, but it will take time." "Do it," she said softly. "I'll keep watch." Ethan bent over the small control pad, connecting the wires and trying not to trigger the alarm. His fingers worked quickly, guided by memory and luck. He heard nothing except the wind and the beat of his own heart, until a soft hum told him the code had broken. The bars slid back with a slow metallic sigh. They went inside. The air was colder. The hall was filled with dust and the smell of oil. The only light came from the small lamp Ethan carried. She looked around the large chamber. "This place was built by people with hope," she said. "They wanted to store their knowledge here, safe from time." Ethan looked at the broken screens, the fallen beams. "Now it's just another grave." She turned to him. "Not yet. If the old records are still below, they can still save more than just me." He looked at her as she walked farther into the dark, still felt unsure. His duty said she was dangerous, but his heart whispered that maybe she was telling the truth. When they reached the lower stairs, they heard voices from above. Someone had seen the open door. Ethan grabbed the woman's arm. "We need to move fast. They're coming." She nodded without fear. "Then down we go." They ran down the spiral steps into the deep shadows where the air grew moist and cool. Ethan's lamp flickered over large stone walls covered in faded writing. The woman stopped before one of the carvings and traced the lines with her hand. "This is it," she whispered. "The cure was real. Formula is here." Ethan stared at the symbols, knowing he could not read them. "Can you understand it?" "Some," she said. "Not all. I will need time." From above came the echo of boots and the sound of metal hitting stone. Soldiers were breaking through the doors. Ethan looked up, then back at her. "You get what you came for," he said. "I'll hold them off." She touched his hand briefly. "You're braver than you think, Ethan." Their eyes met, and for a breath of time, the world seemed still. Then the floor shook with explosions. Dust fell like snow. Ethan gripped his knife and turned toward the stairs as the woman began copying the carvings in the dim light. The fight was coming. Neither of them knew if they would survive, but in that cold, underground place, a strange bond had already taken root, something stronger than fear. It continues directly from the end of Part 3 and keeps that same tone and flow. The tunnel shook again as dust fell from the ceiling. Ethan could hardly see through the smoke. His ears rang from the blasts above. The woman was still at the wall, trying to read the strange symbols. The weak light from the small lamp shone on her pale face. "We have to move," Ethan said. "They are almost here. Just a few more lines," she answered without looking back. Her voice was calm but soft. He could already hear running footsteps. Captain Lena and her soldiers were right above them. Their voices bounced through the stone chambers. Ethan gripped his knife tighter, though he doubted a knife could help against guns. He turned toward the stairwell when a shadow fell over the doorway. "Stop right there." Lena's voice broke through the smoke. "Don't move." Ethan froze. The woman turned around slowly. Soldiers filled the stairway with rifles raised. The bright lights from their helmets made the room glow like day. Lena's eyes widened when she saw the woman. "You," she whispered. "You have no right to live after what you did." Ethan took a small step forward. "Lena, please listen. She isn't our enemy. She has something that can heal all of this." "I've seen it. It's real." Lena pointed her weapon straight at the woman. "You think I would believe that?" The woman faced her calmly, though she looked weak and tired. "If you shoot me now," she said, "the cure dies with me, and the hunger will never end." The soldiers whispered among themselves. Lena frowned, lowering her gun slightly. "What cure?" "The writings on this wall," Ethan said quickly. "It's the formula to change her blood. It can stop the disease that turned her into what she is. It can save us too." Lena hesitated. Then the ground trembled again, and part of the ceiling broke apart. A block of stone crashed between them, sending up a cloud of dust. The soldiers shouted, firing blindly as the floor cracked under their feet. "Move!" Ethan shouted, grabbing the woman's arm. They ran down a lower passage. Fire and smoke filled the air. Behind them, voices echoed, calling his name, demanding him to stop. The woman stumbled, coughing weakly. "Keep going," she said. "Do not stop for me. If I leave you, you'll die," Ethan answered. He helped her down another stairway until they reached a huge door half buried in sand. It was covered in symbols. The door opened slightly after Ethan pressed a control pad on the wall. Together they stepped into another wide chamber that smelled of rust and age. Blue lines of light glowed faintly under layers of dust. Machines covered the walls like sleeping giants. In the middle was a round glass table, cracked but still glowing. The woman touched the table gently. "This was once a research hall," she whispered. "Here they tried to fix what went wrong." Ethan looked around. "Can you use it?" "It still remembers my touch," she said, and placed her palm on the glass. The light brightened, and the machines hummed alive. Symbols shimmered across the wall again. A small projection appeared above the table, showing patterns of blood cells and numbers. Her eyes lit with hope. "It's here. The full remedy code. We can end it now." Ethan smiled tiredly. "Then we take it and leave." Before she could answer, an explosion shook the passage behind them. The tunnel was collapsing. Lena's voice echoed faintly, ordering everyone to retreat. The woman turned to Ethan quickly. "They are destroying the tower. Take the data. Save it." Ethan opened the metal box at the base of the machine and found a small cube glowing faintly. He stuffed it into his pack. "Got it. Now come with me." But when he looked at her, she had fallen to her knees. Blood stained the edge of her cloak. "You're hurt," he said. She took a slow breath. "I can still move, but not far. My body grows weaker each time I use my power." The fire burned through me. He pulled her up, placing her arm over his shoulder. "We're not stopping now." As they reached the doorway, the ceiling cracked again. The noise was like thunder. Light from the rising sun seeped through the broken rocks. Lena appeared on the other side of a fallen beam, her rifle lowered. She looked at Ethan, shock on her face. "You are alive?" "Barely," he shouted back. "I have the cure." Lena nodded once and called to her men. Open a path. Get them out. Ethan and the woman slipped through the gap. Behind them, fire swallowed the lower chambers. The tower shook like an old giant giving its final breath. Once outside, the woman looked over her shoulder at the falling building. Her eyes shone with sadness. "So many years gone," she whispered. Ethan held her close as the last stones crashed down. "Oh, you kept something alive. It's what matters." She smiled faintly, her voice quiet. "Maybe there will be peace now." Together they stood under the morning sun, the wind lifting her torn cloak. Behind them, the Tower of Secrets turned to dust, but in Ethan's pack, the small cube glowed softly, a promise that hope had survived. Ethan looked at her pale face and said, "We made it." She nodded slowly, her strength fading. "Yes, but now the rest belongs to you." The ridge was quiet at last. Only the wind carried their heavy breathing as they began the long walk back toward the city, where the fate of everyone would soon change. The sky was turning red with the first light of dawn when Ethan carried the woman out of the broken passage. The tower behind them groaned, and dust poured from the cracks like smoke from a dying fire. He could barely breathe, but he did not stop. The woman leaned heavily against him, her steps small and slow. Her cloak was torn, and her face looked pale as the morning mist. They crossed the ruined plain as the sun rose higher. Patrol vehicles were gone. Only silence followed them now. Far in the distance, smoke rose from the city walls where the human camp still stood. Ethan's legs shook under her weight, but he refused to let her fall. "Hold on," he said softly. "We're almost safe." She gave a weak smile. "Safe does not exist for me," she whispered. "But you must live. You have the cure." He paused and looked at her. "I can't leave you behind. You're the reason I even believe this world can heal." Her eyes shone faintly, almost like silver catching the sunrise. "Then promise me you'll give them the cure before they destroy each other again." He nodded, though he could feel his throat tighten with emotion. By the time they reached the outer road, Captain Lena and her soldiers had found them. The soldiers pointed their rifles, ready to fire, but Lena stopped them with one raised hand. She looked at Ethan first, then at the woman struggling beside him. "Brooks," Lena said carefully, "step away from her." Ethan raised his voice, full of urgency. "Listen to me, Lena. She's not the monster we thought. She saved me, saved all of us. I have proof. The cure is real." Lena's eyes narrowed. "Do you really expect me to believe that after all the lives she took?" The woman lifted her head, her voice thin but steady. "I never killed out of choice. I fought against it every moment. If I had surrendered to my hunger, you would all be gone long ago. This cure can end it forever. Please, let him give it to your people." Lena hesitated. The woman's voice carried no hatred, only sorrow. Then Lena noticed Ethan's arms shaking from exhaustion, the bandages on his shoulder, and the small data cube clutched in his hand. "Put the rifle down," Lena told her soldiers. They obeyed, lowering their weapons slowly. Ethan laid the woman gently on the ground. Her breathing was shallow, her pulse thin. He looked at Lena. "Get your medics." She's fading." Lena crouched beside her. For a long moment she said nothing. Finally she whispered, "I remember when you first appeared. People said you had the strength of 10 men and the heart of none. But I see now they were wrong." The woman smiled faintly. "Strength fades. The heart is harder to kill." Ethan held her hand. "You'll see it through. We'll get you that cure too." She shook her head. "It may be too late for me. But my end can still mean a new beginning for others." Lena looked at Ethan. "You believe this cure will work?" "I do," he said firmly. "If it didn't, she wouldn't have fought this hard." Lena stood and gave orders to her team. They took the data cube carefully and connected it to a portable console. A blue light spread across the screen, showing formulas and medical codes. Lena stared at it in silence. "If this is true," she said softly, "it could save us all." Ethan knelt beside the woman again. "Hear that? It's working? You did it." Her eyes fluttered open, reflecting the morning light. "Then it was worth everything." He pressed her hand against his chest. "You will live. I promise." But she only smiled, her voice fading like a whisper in the wind. "Live for me, Ethan. keep them safe. Her hand grew still. Her eyes closed gently, like someone falling into peaceful sleep. Ethan stayed quiet, unable to speak. The world around them held its breath. Lena lowered her head. "We'll honor her, Brooks. What she did will not be forgotten." The sun rose fully now, painting the ruins gold. The soldiers stood in silence. Ethan carried her body to the small hill nearby, where wild grass still grew through the stones. He placed her cloak over her and stepped back, his heart heavy but proud. Days passed. The scientists worked around the clock using the data she left behind. Soon word spread that the cure was real. The hunger disease that had haunted mankind for generations was finally gone. There were no more night hunts, no more fear of the dark. People spoke her name quietly, not as a legend of horror but as one of hope. Ethan often walked to the hill where he had buried her. He would stand there at sunset, feeling the wind move through the grass, and remember the voice that had told him to see beyond fear. He always carried around his neck the small signet ring she had worn, the last symbol of her lost kingdom. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, he looked over the fields of green that had begun to bloom again. The world was healing. Humanity was healing. He closed his eyes and whispered, "You were right. Mercy is stronger than blood." He turned and walked back toward the settlement lights where children laughed and workers sang while rebuilding the city walls. The air smelled of clean rain for the first time in years. The world had started over. And though she was gone, Ethan knew that her strength and kindness remained in every heart that had learned her story. The vampire woman who had once been hunted like a monster was now remembered as a queen of compassion. And the man she saved would never forget that she had given her last breath not for power but for peace.